to start?
Indeed.
Thank you. The Office of the City Manager is pleased to submit for Mayor and City Council review and consideration the fiscal year 2020-2021 proposed budget in compliance with provisions of the City of College Park Charter and State of Georgia statutes. We'll have a lengthy discussion over the next several weeks relative to specific considerations involving each department and section of municipal operations. Interestingly enough, we do provide a brief executive session as part of the submission we've offered thus far. We've actually made a number of adjustments to it considering the adverse impacts to economic affairs relative to the COVID-19 event. In essence, we have assembled recommendations that yield a balanced budget recommendation of $132,849,430. This is actually a decrease of about $5,731,563, or 4.1% from the current fiscal year. However, it's really important to be mindful of what the initial budget recommendations had been in the event that we did not experience the current state of affairs relative to COVID-19 and its impacts to the economy. The initial recommendation, ladies and gentlemen, involved a total fund budget recommendation of in excess of $144 million. So from that standpoint, we are coming in with a budget recommendation reduced by over $12 million based on the current state of affairs surrounding COVID-19 and the likely impacts to revenues and expenditures here in the city of College Park, Georgia. So with that, we've gone about the painstaking process of engaging austerity measures, some of which I did have an opportunity to discuss with Mayor and City Council during this past Monday evening's executive session, and other individual dialogue discussions I've had with each of you all respectively. Interestingly enough, we also had an opportunity to previously discuss matters related to personnel, capital, and quite frankly, there's not much to discuss in those regards. So typically the first budget workshop meeting will provide an opportunity for the City of College Park, the Office of the City Manager, and all others involved to discuss personnel matters. And quite frankly, there's really not much of a point to accomplish that for the reasons I just described. Not much in the way of capital outlay, but that will come up with specific departments going forward. However, this first budget workshop meeting, the very first in the history of College Park, we're biased to be engaged on a virtual basis, and that will likely be the case for the remainder of this month. This first evening involves brief updates from the Federal Aviation Administration via our property management firm, Colliers International, along with legislative and executive, business license, financial administration, accounting, human resources, and information technology. So typically for you, Mayor Motley Broom, Ken Allen, you have an opportunity to address any specific questions or concerns relative to expenditures. But quite frankly, I'm really thankful for all departments working with the Office of the City Manager and that of Director of Finance and Accounting, Althea Lloyd Bradley, relative to collaboratively addressing what they could in terms of austerity measures, helping us to bring forth what would be a balanced budget recommendation. However, there is an element of a moving target in this regard because, of course, we all are hopeful that we'll be able to resume economic conditions or economic activity on a normal basis as soon as possible. But again, that's something we'll have to monitor as the weeks and months progress. Nevertheless, we did do, I think, a solid job in terms of making adjustments to yield a less expensive spending plan, and therefore revenue forecasts to reflect that outcome as well. So unless there are any other specific questions or concerns regarding the overview, we are at liberty to address any questions or concerns regarding the FAA package. The FAA package is perhaps the most straightforward outcome because, of course, of our relationship with the United States General Services Administration via the presence of the Federal Aviation United States Southern Regional Headquarters of that operation. So revenues are solid because of the lease agreement, not to mention other capital resources that are made available by the United States General Services Administration, administered in concert with our relationship with Colliers. So with that introduction, Councilman Clay.
I do have a question or two on the overview.
Sir.
So at this point, what is the assumption on the revenue reduction for the first quarter, which would be July 1 of this year, beginning July 1 of this year, what is the forecast of the revenue reduction coming out of the hospitality industry? What percentage? What is baked into this budget?
So essentially in that regard, we forecasted a 25% reduction based on one quarter representing 25% of the year. As simply as we can put it, I'll have Thea chime in a little bit about this because she and I spent time together coming up with various economic assumptions and projections on that basis. And quite frankly, we did visit with leadership of the hospitality community, not only here with the ATL Airport District, but also we had an opportunity to engage with Mercedes Miller, other experts externally as well to see what they had to say in that regard. They are fairly optimistic in that they anticipate in their forecasts that revenues will actually get back to normal by the second quarter, if not by the latter part of the first quarter. So definitely between the next few months, the last remainder of this quarter, April, May, June, pretty much dormant in that. And then July and August, but we were communicated just recently as this morning via our executive team meeting that it is anticipated that activity will come back to life. An interesting footnote that was offered this morning as well is that in the city of College Park, the hotel motel properties in and around the airport, notably those in College Park, are having a much better experience than those further north of us. We were advised that somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 hotels located throughout metropolitan or downtown Atlanta, Buckhead, and Midtown have ceased operations for the time being. However, that has not been the case here in College Park. There is actually some level of activity, anywhere between 10% to 20% occupancy. So based on those forecasts, we did make some adjustments. And as reflected in the executive summary, the abbreviated transmittal letter, there is a reference regarding hospitality. So on the revenue side or operating expenses, we're looking at a decrease of about 10.4%. And that is reflective of revenue outcomes as well.
So how do you think, if we've got say a 20% occupancy now in the hotels, how does that translate into a revenue reduction to us from the hotels? In other words, they're normally about 80% or so occupied, and now they're 20% occupied. If that is a good number, that would be a 75% reduction, right? From 80 to 20. Would that translate? Does that translate into a 75% reduction in revenue that we get from the hotels?
For a specific period of time?
Yeah.
For a specific period of time over the remainder of this quarter, perhaps?
Yes.
A couple of months of the fiscal year. But again, given the trend analysis we talked about in terms of forecasts to resume normal economic activity, and again, as I prefaced earlier, it is a bit of a moving target in that regard.
Right, right.
So because it's a moving target and forecasting for 12 months, a lot of the revenue losses are anticipated to occur at the beginning of the fiscal year. So if I can call your attention to page 3 of the budget letter of transmittal or the executive summary, if you take a look at the hospitality line, the amended budget for the current fiscal year, $12,280,691. That is being reduced to $10,999,730, a decrease of about 1.2 million, nearly 1.3 million dollars because of the dynamics we're talking about.
Right, right.
So that's the offset in that regard. And that forecast is based on all involved, hopefully resuming a more normal level of activity beginning in the second quarter.
Right. I just want everybody to understand that there's a potential negative side that we could end up having to come back and make adjustments.
That's my point exactly as well, Councilman Clay. So Councilman Clay, my commentary a couple of times in my introductory comments relative to this being a moving target, that's specifically what I had in mind when I offered those comments.
Okay.
So that's exactly right. But based on forecasts, based on econometrics, if you will, to come up with a calculation, we're going in with a downward adjustment. So again, the variance is nearly a decrease of $1.3 million on the hospitality side. And there's some other downward adjustments as well we'll be able to engage and discuss as we engage this process over the next few weeks.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
going to piggyback on Councilman Clay's question because I'm not sure that I understood the answer. If in this final quarter of the 2019-2020 fiscal year, if we see a 75% reduction in hospitality, in hotel motel tax to the city, does that, I mean, is that reflected here, or are we being more optimistic than that?
No, that's actually reflected here going into the first quarter. So the first quarter, that's where the big revenue drop will occur for the upcoming fiscal year. As we close out fiscal year 2019-2020, end of the year budget adjustment, we'll be able to provide you all with a solid sense as to what that impact is. But we're currently in a process as we monitor this moving target to ascertain where we would be in that regard. So there is some downward trends beginning of the month of March. So we're still receiving numbers to that effect. But based on what I talked about earlier, the revenue outcome for definitely the first 2 months of the new fiscal year is reflected in that regard. That's when revenues will be definitely down. We're hopeful and praying, of course, that at the conclusion of the first quarter of the new fiscal year, there's a resumption of normal activity. And that's what the industry is basically sharing with us. And we do incorporate that in the assumptions. However, at the end of the first quarter, to Councilman Clay's point, we may be in position to have to make further adjustments if economic affairs or economic conditions do not improve. So the numbers I just talked about as far as the hospitality piece, the downward reductions are a reflection of the calculations we have in mind.
And you
Okay.
say,
I'm sorry, somebody.
and you say right now it's running between 15 and 20% occupancy?
Roughly, yes. Anywhere between 10 and 20s, which averages about 15% occupancy.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, as I shared a little while ago, 35 or so hotels are 0% occupancy and they are not even operational. So much of the activity in terms of any hotel, motel occupancy at all is in our community. And that's a cogent observation that was just shared with us this morning, which helps us in this particular presentation. So again, with those low occupancy levels, that's the basis of us going in the beginning of the new fiscal year with reduced revenues. So we hope and pray that improves by the beginning of the second quarter. So that would be October 1. But quite frankly, it remains to be seen. But based on what we know, this is the forecast.
What amount of revenue do we typically get, from the hotels per quarter? How many million?
On a quarterly basis, so it fluctuates. Some quarters are better than others.
Sure.
The best way to answer that question is, again, referencing page 3, which we have on the hospitality side. So for the current fiscal year, 1920, the forecast was somewhere in the neighborhood of $12.2 million. So
that'd be about $3 million a quarter.
On average, yes, but some quarters are.
But summer is slower.
Summer is slower. I was about to mention, yes.
So wouldn't it make more sense to look at the same time period for the past, couple of years to get an idea of what we would be looking at? I mean, because summer is essentially where we're going to lose the revenue, correct? I mean, if everyone's looking at this as a somewhat finite issue, being relatively optimistic that this resolves itself by the second quarter, starting October 1st. So we need to look at that quarter for the past few years to give us an idea, and perhaps look at that at a 75% reduction. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. And that is part of the analysis. And what's helpful to us is that, to Councilman Clay's point, and I think a point you're about to make, Mayor Motley Broom, is that the summer months are a lull period. That is actually the weakest time in terms of economic performance. It improves in the fall, it's even stronger in the winter, and spring is pretty solid as well. So Councilman Clay, you're asking about what the quarterly outcome is in that regard. So let's say $12.2 million based on 1920. So for the summer, that number may be closer to $2 million
Right.
or a little bit less than $2 million.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if we have to make tweaks downward in terms of revenue forecast, the first quarter of the new fiscal year is probably the best time to do that.
We're lucky that way.
We're lucky that way. That's exactly right. So to Mayor Motley Broom's point, we've reviewed analysis, if you will, the past couple, 3, 4, 5 years, and it's pretty consistent in that regard. So your low period is the first quarter because it's the summer, July, August, September. So that is somewhat helpful, if I can use the term helpful in this context of the presentation.
Okay, I'm just saying that if things don't turn out the way we anticipate, there's a potential that we're going to have to make additional cuts. And the earlier we make them, the better off we are.
That's exactly right. So what I anticipate happening as we engage the new fiscal year, ladies and gentlemen, is a quarterly review of revenue forecast. We'll be able to have a sense in terms of where we are, particularly the enterprise fund-based operations driven by hotel, motel tax, mixed drink on the hospitality side, and that is definitely the biggest moving target of them all. And that will be shared as we continue this particular budget review exercise. So here we are. And that's exactly right, everyone.
Do you have an idea of what the revenue is going to be for the hotel, the total revenue for the hotel motel tax for this next, for the last quarter of this year?
We are in the process of coming up with calculations to reflect that. Definitely down beginning in March. So what we're concerned about is April, May, June.
Right.
So there would be a pretty significant dip in that regard, and that's why we're making adjustments. So we'll be providing some background information to reflect that. So based on the occupancy rates being between 10 and 20%, we'll be able to come up with calculations to indicate what that is. Typically the spring or the last quarter of the fiscal year, spring, so April, May, June, is fairly healthy. So let's say $3 million of that, we're probably impacted by close to $1 million, conservatively speaking.
And that will affect as you and I have discussed before, that will affect the carry forward, the budget reserve that we carry into the next year. And presumably you've made adjustments for that.
That's correct. And the budget process makes adjustments to that effect. And we do take that into consideration to support what Councilman Ken Allen just talked about, because we are anticipating some downward adjustments. So that's all part of the package, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why I appreciate and thank Council for giving us the opportunity for a couple more weeks to revise budget recommendations in terms of revenue and expenditure forecasts to take that all into consideration. Ultimately, we're talking about a reduction of over $12 million from what our initial set of recommendations are. So again, a lot of good work was done to get to that place. And to Councilman Clay's point, the earlier the better. That's my discussion and direction offered during the meeting Monday night.
Okay.
Any other questions or thoughts relative to the general overview? If not, Madam Mayor, if I may be permitted, again, there's really not much at all to talk about in terms of personnel matters. I think we've covered that pretty well. In terms of capital outlay, there'll be some individual from departments, but pretty straightforward activity, nothing terribly sizable or creative. We'll talk a little bit about that in terms of car rental expenditures, car rental eligible expenditures in that T-Splosh activity, et cetera, as we engage with the particular departments. But again, nothing terribly compelling right now for the reasons that are obvious and outlined. So with that, I'd like to give you all the opportunity to address any specific questions or concerns regarding the FAA operation, which again, generally speaking, is perhaps the most straightforward of them all. With that, we have Ron Rokason representing our property management firm, Colliers, who is on the line telephone audio. So with that, please feel free.
I have one question for Ron. Ron,
Yes,
how are
sir.
you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Are you doing extra cleaning over there?
Yes, we have about 1,400 people that work here, and they're all gone. And so we're doing deep cleaning. GSA, as long as we're here and we got the building, the lights on, they keep paying our rent. And so, yeah, we're doing deep cleaning. we're cleaning, I mean, everywhere. And it's good, it's really good, but it's lonely over here, I can tell you that.
Don't you still have a few people in the penthouse?
Oh yeah, they will always be here, the operation folks, and the Federal Protection Service is here a lot. In fact, they come in and check to make sure the lights is on and the power or the HVAC is running, and they come in and check with me, and that's about it. It's just a hello, but it has to be open. If there's an emergency, then they will have it. But for the most part, they've asked people to stay home, and they have.
Right. Well, my only question that I have on the detail is on your page 2 of 2, and it's the line item 547640, which is the new lighting system for the daycare facility. And that's about 140, well, up toward $141,000. I know it's old. I know you make a comment in the backup sheets that it is, it's hard to get parts to fix things. But is it something that we could hang on to for another year? Presumably it didn't just suddenly get bad. We hung on to it for this past year. Is there a reason why we couldn't hang on to it? Or maybe I see a phase 1 and 2, we'll only do phase 1 to reduce that.
The problem that we have, and for the last 5 years, we've really been putting a lot of patchwork and Band-Aids on it. But the problem that we have now is that we have no controls. The controls are totally gone. We can't get parts. It's over. So what happens is that when the time changed, it didn't change on this system. Now, after the time change, we ran into this virus and everybody's gone, but sooner or later, they're going to come and call on me about that. I cannot control it. And the other thing that I might add that very much concerns me is that sometimes some of these zones won't come on. They're not commanded to come on. And so, and this is the part I hate, I've asked some of my technicians to go up and hotwire it. And that's low voltage. You're not going to get electrocuted, but it's not a safe thing to do. And we have no control of it. And so because of that, I would really urge you to go ahead and and the system is just not for the daycare, it's for the entire facility. And it's for the entire facility. Yeah. And, but it all needs to be controlled and because we don't know if these systems are going to come on in the mornings or not. And my guys are always ready to go turn them on, but it's like that every day.
What happens when they don't come on? You just don't have any lights or what?
Well, you don't have any lights until my guy goes up or my guys, they go up and they hotwire it and then they'll come on.
Okay.
And, but again, that's low voltage, but it's still not a safe thing to do.
Okay. That's the only question I had, Terrence.
Very well. Any others regarding FAA, ladies and gentlemen?
Councilman Allen had a question about the miscellaneous services for FAA. I did give Ron a heads up to be prepared to answer that question. Correct, Councilman Allen?
Yes.
So Ron, go ahead.
I'm prepared. What it is, Councilman, is that back in July 1st of 2018, the city and GSA entered into an SLA, a supplemental lease agreement. And basically what that is that FAA was performing certain tasks that they were doing, like gazebos and cleaning those and doing their generators. There's a whole list. And so what happened was they said, we'll pay you more rent if you will take over these responsibilities. So that's what they did. The city entered into an agreement and they kicked the rent up, and I wasn't a part of that, so I don't know what all that's about. But this is the first year we get the full boat. And just to give an example of what's in there, we have like the UPS room. It's a huge room, and we're responsible for it now. the maintenance of it. The HVAC in the visitor center, we do all of that. The gazebos, it's a long list. The Liebert units, we're doing all the recycling. The gazebo cleaning, carpet cleaning in the daycare. The list goes on and on. We're doing it. We got it managed, but this is the first year we got it all in, and that's why it went up a little bit.
Councilman Allen, does that satisfactorily answer your question?
I was just wondering what the miscellaneous was, and he's answered that question. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Very well, sir. Any others for Ron Wilkerson concerning Federal Aviation Administration operations? If not, ladies and gentlemen, again, the considerations are pretty straightforward. I would like to give Ron Wilkerson the opportunity to excuse himself.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Everybody have a nice evening. Thank you very much.
You too, Ron.
Okay.
Good night, Ron. We'll talk to you
Good
later.
night.
Talk to you tomorrow. The next consideration involves legislative and executive. Legislative, of course, mayor and city council, pretty straightforward. Executive being the office of the city manager, and the mayor is actually included with the executive budget as well. Considering some of the legislative expenditures are a function of office of the city clerk administration, Shavela, you may be in position to address any specific questions or concerns that may arise as a result of that review. As such, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free.
In the page 1 of 3 of the budget worksheet, I wasn't sure why there was a 3% drop in salaries. How is that going to be achieved?
I believe, yeah, that was a straight calculation, was it not?
Yes, what it's doing is comparing last year's budget to the current year actual budget. We had some positions in there that were vacant at the beginning of the budget process last year, and they've been since filled, but they didn't meet the maximum salary. So basically, it's based on actual now versus just the budget out there, depending on who basically came into the position, who was hired for the position.
In other words, the people who came into the position cost less than the previous.
I got it. I heard her. I got it. I totally understood what she said. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just enthusiastic, Mayor. Forgive me. Any other questions or concerns, legislative and executive?
Yes, I've got a question on page 1 of 3 for legislative. The R&M of the buildings, line 57, 52, 57, 40. That's up 79%. Why is that?
That's for a new potential HVAC controls unit that we've been putting off for a couple of years now. So we got a quote from our current vendor, Legacy Mechanical, on the estimate that it might be to get it done. And I put it in the budget to get you guys feedback.
What are the disadvantages in letting it go a year?
Well, right now it's kind of like rigged almost. They got to come in ever so often because the air always goes out in City Hall, or the heat isn't working, vice versa. So it's just having them to pay them extra to come out to do that continued maintenance.
Okay. So it's a trade-off between operational expenses and investing in the capital to clean it up.
Yeah, if we could just get it done right, we wouldn't need them as much.
Okay, next one is on page 2 of 3, and it relates specifically to me. Up near the top, line 52, 62, 35, conventions and meetings, Ward 1. I am on I'm on 3 different boards. I'm on the Aviation Rulemaking Committee, Rulemaking Advisory Committee, and I go to Washington right now 4 times a year. Now, fortunately, I haven't had to go to 3 different meetings this past month, so that's been a good thing for travel expenses and me too. But normally, I have 9 trips a year 4 to the Aviation Rulemaking Advisory Committee, 2 to the Advisory Committee on research being done by FAA and the universities. And I'm on the noise board, and there are 2 noise meetings a year. So you're talking 9 or 10 meetings a year, excluding or including if you add in GMA, the annual conference at GMA. I see it's been cut, and I think it should be cut from 10 to 5. I'm just saying, in order to maintain my position on these boards, if they start picking up the actual physical meetings, I can't miss all of them. So it's going to end up being more than $5,000. I'm just giving everybody a heads up on that. Hopefully it won't, hopefully we'll be doing this. Well, it depends on what you mean, hopefully, but we did the last Aviation Rulemaking Committee by teleconference, and it worked out pretty well if everybody's on teleconference. So I'm just giving everybody a heads up. I may be coming back and say, I don't have enough money in order to go to this meeting. And then we got to decide, do we want me on these boards or not?
Is there a possibility you could move some of the money from, say, my bucket over to your bucket?
Well, that's always a possibility, and I appreciate the offer, Ken. If needed, I would be very grateful.
That works for me. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions concerning legislative, ladies and gentlemen?
I'm good.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I think someone else was about to talk. Or
Well, I'm
not.
sorry, I do have one more, Shavela. I thought we took this out last year. There's, I'm back at page 2 of 3. There is, this is in the backup in the back. Line 52, 62, 20, down near the bottom of the page, web monitoring Ward 1. That was the charge that I used to have to pay for access to aircraft data on a website. I got rid of that several years ago. I'm not putting in for reimbursement for that. I've actually replaced it with something else, but I'm not even putting in for reimbursement on that. So not a big deal, but I thought we were going to take it off. I thought
You can take it off.
that came up at the budget meeting last year, and I thought we were going to drop it off. And again, it's only $300, but still.
Okay, I'll make sure I take it out.
And that's all I have.
Mayor Motley Broom, I believe you had a question.
I did. In regard to our council meeting meals, is that strictly for our regular session meetings on Mondays?
Yes.
Yes.
So we need over $200 to feed 5 people, 6 people, 6 people every time?
I mean, it's just discretion of you guys. If you want, only strictly mayor and council to eat.
I mean,
Sounds like a lot.
it does sound like a lot. It sounds like a heck of a lot when that food is not available to anyone else. I think either we need to feed everyone or we need to cut it. I mean, I'm all for either. I mean, I'm all for feeding everyone, but I think we should be able to feed everyone for $5,000 in the year.
Yeah, I don't understand why it would be as much as it is. Is that is that an accurate estimate of what it's
It is. Sometimes I think it even has gone over a couple of times. So it's enough. The cost I believe comes in with a lot of delivery We try to utilize delivery services not now, but before, much as we can, so we don't have to go off site and worry about dragging the food into the council chambers or the council conference room. But that's usually the going rate. When I've done it, assisting the executive assistant to mayor and council, the ticket is usually over $200.
Can we
So,
cut it
so
down?
they charge us a premium just because they deliver it?
Yeah, and it has to be a certain amount to even get delivery.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what if we actually attempted to employ? I mean, the food tends to be like Zaxby's or Chick-fil-A or something like that. What if we actually use someone close by? What if we actually use someone on Main Street? I'm sure they
Yeah.
wouldn't mind bringing it over, and we could probably save some money.
We can try that.
And I just don't like. To me, that seems excessive for 20, not even 24 meetings. But I'm open, but it just seems excessive to me.
I agree with you, Mayor.
I do too. I think we definitely ought to use somebody local and
Yeah.
we can.
I mean, especially in this climate when, it matters so much more. Taking the opportunity to use a local vendor, I'm sure that I've taken the opportunity to use some local vendors for feeding public works and police, and they're happy to do it. They can work out some form of delivery if necessary. So, I mean, even a 25% reduction would. I mean, I'm not throwing out. I think we can do better. It just seems like a lot of money on us.
Might I offer a recommendation, and instead of a $5,000 budget to this effect, make it $4 million, with the proviso that we utilize local businesses.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Very well. We save $1,000 going in July 1. Let's do it.
I mean, you can go to Noodles right across the street.
Sure.
I'm
Yeah.
not suggesting we eat everything eat from Noodles every time, but
I mean,
No,
and
there
then
are
Hattie
other
Marie's right
options.
next door. I mean, we can. I'm sure that if we spent $100 at Hattie Marie's, that would certainly feed everyone.
yeah, I would think so.
Okay, $4,000 it is for a savings of $1,000. So
Good.
consented?
I'm good with that.
Very well.
Everyone else good with that?
Yep.
Thank you. Sounds good.
You
Any
actually
other questions for,
from this year.
I'm sorry, sir?
You should have some carryovers from this year.
Potentially, yes, sir. Any other questions or observations for legislative?
Terrence, I don't know if Councilman Taylor's on, but is he at the bottom of the screen? At the Councilman Taylor, are you on?
Yes, ma'am, I'm on.
Okay,
Councilman Taylor's on audio, so you're good to go, Councilman Taylor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very
He's been
well.
here
Thank
a
you, sir.
while. He's been here a while. I was just
Yeah,
wondering.
I see that. I just wanted everybody to acknowledge the number in the bottom right-hand corner as being Councilman Derek Taylor. Councilman Taylor, do you have any other questions, sir?
No, sir, not right now.
Thank you. I would
Why
like
don't
to-
you change his name to, why don't you change the phone number to a name? You can do that.
If there aren't any further questions or observations concerning legislative, I'd like to entertain executive. Again, fairly straightforward.
The 26% increase on page 1 of 3 in telephone.
Mayor, would that be for executive or legislative?
I believe I'm on. This is page 75 of 212. I believe I'm in executive.
Yep, you're an executive.
You are. That's a calculation. So coming from Michael Hicks, I think it would probably be productive for you to, where are you? You were here, there you are, up there in the upper left-hand corner. So under communications and utilities, if you can provide a general explanation of the telephone line item and as to how that is simply a calculation based on respective activity of the use of a telephone or telephones.
Sure. So I don't have access to view your budget, but what we do is the actual Cisco phone system. We spread that out through all department based on how many phones you got and the usage.
So are we expecting a 25% increase in the price of the Cisco phones?
No, we should not. I mean, unless you guys added some lines, that's the only way I could see an increase.
Well, you're gonna see that a number probably again, Mayor. We've actually had this problem for several budget years that telephone will go up by strange amounts, and strange in my mind anyhow. Not 26%, but
Well-
I've never quite figured it out.
I mean, we have the data to support it. I mean, Tam, if there's a question mark, I can research it.
Yes, and again, to Councilman Clay's point, I struggle with this every year as well. The calculations are simply what they are. And Thea, we had an exercise about that in 2019 after your first year being on board as to why that is. So what we're talking about are the Cisco landlines and other activities related therein.
But
Then
there's
is there
more to
anything
that.
else? I'm sorry?
It includes the cell phones, iPads, Windstream.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if the current mayor has, the mayor has a iPad. So basically it has each individual with an iPad and iPhones, Windstream. Because the detail is on page 1 of 5 in your detail, and you will see the breakdown.
What page overall? Of
I'm
the
looking
200
at my budget book. I'm not looking at the electronic
Okay.
document that you have. So
All right.
yeah, it would be following
Okay.
the
Got it.
budget worksheet. There's a budget transaction report right behind
I
that.
see it.
And you
I see it.
there it is. Yeah.
So,
I thought we got individually billed for phones, but it all gets lumped together in that telephone line. Is that what you're saying, Thea?
Correct.
Yeah, because the city doesn't even pay for my iPhone or iPad, so I would.
I mean, I don't have an iPad, but I assume that that's what this, but that's okay. It's fine.
Well, then you're in the same situation I am, Mayor.
No, I mean, I have the Surface tablet, but I'm assuming that's what that line item is, and we're not carrying it over.
Oh,
from
yeah,
anything else.
it's
I'm assuming that.
just because it says iPad doesn't mean it's really an iPad. It's been my
Yeah.
experience with the budget.
Okay.
Sometimes Blackberries get lumped in as iPads and
Oh
whatever.
dear. Okay. Hope nobody's carrying a BlackBerry anymore.
Well, Hugh Richardson, did he finally get rid of his?
He finally got rid of it.
Okay.
Guess who was the next to the last person to get rid of the BlackBerry?
You.
Yours truly.
Okay. All right.
I had a question, and I guess I was just looking back, but you cut it off, but salary overtime, why would we have salary overtime? Would that be for, that's on 50-20, and you had 3,000, you've got to cut down to 0, but I just was questioning why there would be salary overtime.
Or the administrative support professional, notably executive assistant to Mayor and City Council, was
Okay.
whenever that individual was called upon to
Okay.
participate in evening meetings, whatever the case may be.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Right.
So wait,
So-
now you're going to cut it down to 0?
We have, yes, as part of the austerity measures. And so we will have this position on salary. So there will be some flexibility in the work hours and that. So we think we can make that work. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I also had a question, miscellaneous services.
What page?
Let's look on the,
Just give the page and the line item, Ken.
yeah, let me find it here.
Are you looking at paper or are you looking online, Ken?
I'm looking at paper right here.
Okay.
So,
The initial request was $9,000, but we're recommending $4,000.
yeah,
Where are we? Oh, you're at
30.
56, 52, 61, 30. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
yes.
Oh.
So miscellaneous service expenses. So that's,
Terrence,
yes, ma'am.
that's Hayes Coffee Service, flowers for bereavement. Whenever we order any type of framing or award or plaque that are related to the city manager's office, those kind of things have come out of there in the past.
Okay, I just was wondering what that was.
Yeah.
I got
Thank
no
you, Ross.
problem with that.
Yeah, and I was about to mention specifically what Rosalind has spoke about. So we will be reducing our level of activity to that effect. So what I anticipate is instead of a full plaque per se, we may do something tasteful yet not as expensive as the plaque so that we can stay in line with that budget consideration. So we'll do our best to be creative to help acknowledge and recognize across the board, but we'll be judicious in the use of the token of appreciation being offered. Any other questions, concerns, observations concerning executive?
Well, okay. I see a 50% reduction in my discretionary allowance. I can live with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Austerity it is.
Austerity measures it is for each of the 5 elected officials and the rest of us.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate it.
It needs to start here.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
There you have it. Any other questions or concerns regarding executive, ladies and gentlemen?
No, I think I've got all those.
Very well. If not, the next item would be business license. Again, the office of the city clerk and the occupational tax clerk, and that's why we had Breland Buckner participating in this conversation as well, Shavela, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very well.
I have no questions on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can we backtrack a little bit? Is Gary Young here?
He is not.
Oh, okay. So airport affairs, let's see, I'm on online page of 80. It's account 526230 for conventions and meetings. Quarterly meetings with Hartsfield Jackson.
Yes, John Selden, the airport general manager.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But okay, the breakfast meetings, like we're supposed to meet for breakfast. Like
We have been.
Yeah, for $800. I'm just saying, like, how much breakfast is that? How many people show up to this meeting?
Roughly about 6 people. So if I may, Mayor.
Six,
The
no,
mayor-
hold on, wait. 6 people have breakfast 4 times a year for $800?
Yes.
Okay.
Where did they have breakfast?
Over at Champions.
Oh,
Champions part of the Marriott. It's a convenient location, easy to get to early in the morning. So what I was about to mention are the typical individuals who attend. So John Selden, of course, airport general manager, the mayor, the city manager, and typically 2 or 3 others from the airport to accompany Mr. Selden, along with Gary Young. So we may have had as many as 7 people in any given sitting, Mayor, but typically it's about 6 people. The city manager, mayor, Gary Young, John Selden, and 2 others, sometimes 3 others.
if you're having it in the hotel, I can see where it could run up more.
And Terrence,
Ma'am,
do you see it's also the breakfast and the lunch meetings?
I mean, we'd already set we haven't set any lunch meetings. We've only
Okay.
we were
Correct.
trying to set the quarterly breakfast meetings, and obviously that didn't quite work out with, in our current climate. But I mean, okay. I'm
Yep.
still just I'm ordering an omelet and that's done. I mean,
right, and I'm not a
even
big
at a
eater
hotel,
myself,
I'm
but,
thinking I'm good with a $12 omelet. But
right.
maybe coffee, but okay.
Yep, that's where it's at, ladies and gentlemen. So getting back to business license, if I may, any questions or concerns?
None.
Any others? Very well. Financial administration. which essentially consists of the Director of Finance and Accounting. So the Department of Finance and Accounting is actually divided into two sections, Finance Administration and Accounting. So they're reflected as noted in the proposed budget documentation. So the financial administration piece involves the property tax clerk and budget analyst. And the property tax clerk, that's not an accurate description of that position. We're talking about Philip Latona. The title, ladies and gentlemen, is actually revenue administrator. Yes?
Yes, and it's
So we need to update that.
on the org chart.
Yes.
Okay, because it's updated on the exhibit.
Yes, so his title is revenue administrator and budget analyst. So
No, his title is revenue tax administrator.
yeah, that's it. Revenue tax administrator. Thank you.
I have one question on that on, let's see, what is the page? It's one of two. And it would be for online, it'd be page 112 if people are looking at it on their computers. Right in the middle, there's telephone again.
Yep, telephone. That was mine too. You took the question.
And that's up, this is, Mayor, this is the standard problem. Now, let me ask Michael Hicks a question. As I recall, Michael, we had to the phone system. We did some upgrading of the phone system. I think it may have been in this current fiscal year. And if that's the case, could it be that the cost of these central servers, there's a directory server and there's a connection server, and I don't remember all the different servers. Is it possible that there's some additional costs there that is getting spread across everybody?
There are some additional costs, but I don't know. I mean, I don't have access to your information, so I'm kind of looking at it blind. I'll have to take a look at it. But the cost that we spread it out is our Mimecast, our email scanning service, our new upgrade email service, the Cisco phones that you have, Windstream, Verizon. Those things are spread out amongst all the departments.
So is Mimecast in this telephone line item then?
I'm not sure.
No,
No.
it's not. It's under.
Mr. Hicks, can you not access it online? The budget?
I can.
And that's, go ahead.
Let me get it.
You want me to send you the link, Mr. Hicks?
Yeah,
Because I think we're probably going to end up having the same question in every department because it seems to be the thing that's sticking out as a notable increase in expenses. So if we get a better understanding of it.
Maybe we should wait, Mayor, and because we're, to your point, every year we've had the same kind of discussion. And
Okay.
maybe we should get an answer to it for the next budget session and figure out what's going on this year with it.
I'm fine with that. I mean, we're seeing it and I'm not that it is what it is pretty much an insufficient answer in my book. So I need a little bit more explanation about why we're seeing this level of increase, because even if we're not adding people, so I'm a little confused about where these added charges are coming from and what kind of value we're receiving from it. And I understand, if our vendors and our suppliers go up on their costs, it is what it is, but I'm not even totally clear that that's the entirety of it.
I suspect some of it. I'm looking at the backup detail now, and so Cisco is in there.
Yes.
And I'm expecting that we did do some upgradings in Cisco. Verizon, the Verizon data plan might be driving it, although it's not a very big number, but the Cisco number is really large.
And the
Yes.
Windstream number, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Windstream, yeah, I keep hoping that once we get the fiber done, we can do away with a lot of that.
I can't wait till we get to my budget so we can talk about that,
Yep.
because that's been cut.
I know.
Okay.
To do it, Michael. So if I may, ladies and gentlemen, he's talking about information technology, the fiber infrastructure, and we'll be addressing that this evening. He's being somewhat editorial.
That's not true, Terrence.
Yeah, it is. Stop it.
Look,
Okay, let's move
well,
on.
how about both of you stop it?
I'm facilitating the budget workshop, that's all.
We're live, people.
All
Yep.
right. So in any event, ladies and gentlemen, to clarify that, the fiber dialogue will take place during the workshop discussion portion involving information technology, so we'll offer clarity at that time. And as far as the telephone line item, let's make a commitment for the beginning of April 15th, Bia, to provide some specifics relative to why the telephone line items throughout all departments and sections is having the experiences that it's having. And again, to Councilman Clay's point, that's occurred pretty much every budget year since I've been on board.
Yeah, I'll get with him because we receive our numbers from his group, so I'll get with him to review that.
Thank you. So we'll make that commitment, and April 15th, we'll offer that update at that time. Would that be okay with everyone?
Yep.
That's fine.
Thank you. Any other questions for financial administration? Any observations at all?
No.
Very well. If not, we'll take the second section of the Department of Finance and Accounting, and that is the accounting section. You have the organizational chart in position, a total of 6 people that operates out of that, which actually includes everyone noted in the respective background information. So pretty flat, and a number of downward adjustments were actually facilitated as a result of the considerations. Any questions or concerns? None?
None for me.
None for me.
Okay,
No, none for me.
all right, very well. If not, human resources and risk management. Total of 3 positions operating at capacity. This is one of the departments in which we are having the hiring freeze experience, because you're technically operating with 2 positions right now. The human resources coordinator is a vacant opportunity, and that will continue to remain the case on an indefinite period of time. So Chris and I are spending time together with one another to collaborate and engage in a little bit of cross-training, working with his colleagues in other departments, such that we'll be able to be solid in terms of that operation with 2 individuals as opposed to 3 for the time being.
There's one thing that bothers me, Terrence, on packet page 2 or 3, you've got a number of items that are 100% reductions. And while I applaud the fact that we're reducing those things, I find it hard to believe you can reduce them 100%. And I got to believe that they may come back and bite us later on. Now, we're not talking huge amounts of money, but why all of a sudden can we just totally eliminate something? Like medical services and supplies, there's 100% reduction there.
There wasn't a request there. Was there?
Contractual services, that means we're not going to contract anybody. We can control that. But how about worker compensation claims, for example? Again, they're normally small, but then you've got unemployment compensation. And that we've got an actual on that of 13,200 and some, and you're assuming that's 0. So how can you assume that unemployment claims are going to be 0?
They're actually funded by other departments, ladies and gentlemen. So this was actually duplicative to include budget line items in the Department of Human Resources and Risk Management. So respective departments actually have line items reflective of these considerations. So there's no need
so you
for
moved it.
here.
It was in HR before, and now you've moved it out into the departments.
Correct.
Okay.
What are the contractual services that are not happening?
Chris.
Line 526170, page 2 of 3 on the, it's page 150 of 212 on the, online.
Contractual services, 526170. That,
6170. Bear with me here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to help you, Chris. I'm looking up the account right now. And just to let everyone know, the position that Terrence is referring to as being frozen, it's still budgeted, so it's still funded. So if they need to move funds around, there's money, there's funds available to transfer between accounts. I just want to point that out.
I have my detail sheet with me, but the only contractual services that we have are for insurance, workers' comp, liability insurance.
So we're not going to be doing those?
We have to do those. I mean, those have to be done in HR.
Well, it sounds to me like you've spread them out amongst the various departments, but I would argue that it's very hard to predict some of those things, whether you're going to need them or not. And it might make more sense to keep them in the HR department and personnel department, just so that they're available for whoever needs them, kind of thing. I don't know,
From an unemployment standpoint, if we're consistent in HR, we can control the number better than individual departments.
You can control the number better?
Absolutely, I can. If we follow policy and be consistent, yes, we can control that number.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised.
I think that's a good idea.
So I just don't understand why these have been set to 0, so.
Mr. Cook, I know that at one point you were discussing farming out payroll processing.
Yes,
Is that contemplated in here?
it's in here.
Where is it?
Mike, when we move NeoGov in,
Chris, did you want me to comment?
yes, it's
Computer
expensive.
hardware?
Yeah, NeoGov HR system of computer hardware.
Mm-hmm.
We got it. Part of that's included in that number.
So let me jump in here. The NeoGov is an enterprise software system that's going to help us with our applications, the candidates, and anybody that's applying for a job. They also have other features in that software package, but it will not replace the HR process that we have now. It'll make it more efficient, but NeoGov will not replace.
No, NeoGov is a recruiting process.
Right.
So we're talking about
Payroll.
subbing out payroll.
Payroll, I mean.
That was
NeoGov,
that was that $2,000 a month that I included. I can't remember. I got notes here.
yeah.
Well, that's for printing the paychecks, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, we're moving to direct deposit.
No, it's
Correct.
also I mean, if we're thinking about, if we're contemplating freezing that and not hiring that third person or trying to hold off on hiring that third person, I think it makes even more sense to try to get payroll outsourced in a way that doesn't burden the folks who are still there.
No, that's definitely going to help the department and help free us up to do other things, especially Shauna to do other things, because it takes up a lot of her time right now.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that it is there. I was trying to find it and I wasn't certain where it was.
Because I don't think you have enough funding in there if you're gonna outsource payroll.
It was.
He does. He has it under salaries.
yes.
Okay.
It would be an adjustment out of salaries. We discussed that. That's where it's at, ladies and gentlemen. To Thea's point earlier, that's how it would be contemplated.
Yeah, I knew it was there.
Yeah, so but the position is still funded, even though there's a hiring freeze, but it's
So-
still funded.
We'll be able to use the resources from that line in order to get us to this place. So that's how we would contemplate it, ladies and gentlemen. And it's structured in this fashion to help achieve a balanced budget recommendation. Any other questions or observations for human resources?
Just the telephone is
Yeah.
not as exorbitant. So I'm really curious about this explanation.
Yes, ma'am. Monday or next Wednesday it is. Any other thoughts or observations?
No, I'm good.
Councilman Allen,
Nope, no, sir.
Councilman Taylor? Councilman Taylor? Councilman Gay?
I think his mic is muted.
It is.
Yes.
Councilman, Mayor Motley Broom, any other questions or concerns, ma'am?
Not there.
Okay, very well.
I unmuted Councilman Gay.
Councilman Gay, did you have any other questions, ma'am?
No,
Sir?
I do not. Thank you.
Councilman Taylor,
Councilman
Yes,
Taylor?
sir.
Okay, there you go.
any
Yes,
questions at
I'm here.
all? Human resources?
No, I don't have any questions.
All right, very well. The final presentation or discussion this evening is the Department of Information Technology.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions, Terrence, on the breakout of personnel. The count is staying the same, but the classification of the people is different. And I presume this is in agreement with the classifications that we changed recently.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'd like to hear this for actually every operational department. I'm not talking about support departments, which we just went through several. But for operational departments where we have capital cuts, I'd kind of like to know what was cut out. And this is, I think, Michael, you had virtually all your capital cut out, if I read it right. Is that correct?
We had quite a few of it cut.
Okay, so the reason for asking the question is that there may be some capital cuts that would have been offset by operational expenses, or that are offset by operational expenses. Now, maybe not to the same degree as the amount of capital that was cut, but at least in the first year. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. If we, for example, apparently you had fiber cut out. You brought, either you or I brought that up earlier. So then if you don't have that there, then you're paying Windstream, or you're paying other costs. Has there been any analysis done of what the offset to the additional cost of operations because the capital is cut out? Has any analysis been done on that?
Well, I mean, I actually pulled the numbers to show what we're currently paying Windstream and what we will be paying for the fiber if we connected the fiber. The fiber is a lot higher initially. Actually, it's higher per month, but in the long run, we're going to get more efficiency out of the fiber than what we're getting out of Windstream.
But bottom line is that we've got a short-term problem. So bottom line is that if we push the fiber off, it's not like we're going to be operating more. You usually look at on a return on investment. And in the industry, at least, if we can get our money back in 2 to 3 years, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
In this particular situation, though, we're just trying to get through the next year.
Yeah.
So I can understand why we would put off an investment in capital. But if it came close to paying for itself in the first year, then I would say, maybe we ought not to be putting that one off because that's too close.
Right. The only capital expense that was cut was the funding for our new CCTV guy. Right now, I don't have any money to buy equipment. If the cameras go out, we had to cut that expense. So that's why I sent you guys that information so that we could take another look at that. But if you guys think that we can do without it for a few months till things get better, then we'll do what we can to keep the cameras up.
Well, let me ask you this. Is our CCTV guy maintaining the Flox cameras too?
No, he's not. No, those cameras.
That's right. I remember. That's part of their contract, isn't it?
Right.
Hmm.
But right now, we don't have any funding to buy camera equipment if the cameras are out.
I don't know. I use the cameras, but I don't know whether the other council members do, or whether how heavily they're used by the police. So I'm going to ask other people to chime in on that one.
Not been provided access to those. I've requested, but hasn't happened yet.
Okay. Well, we could certainly make that happen for you. But Dawn pulls the data off of the cameras occasionally. But Madam Mayor, we'll make sure you get access.
For example, in this period right now, we've shut down the parks, right? Well, we have cameras on all the parks. So you don't necessarily have to have a police officer running by the park every 15, 20 minutes. Somebody could easily look at the cameras and say, hey, you got a problem here, you got a problem there, et cetera, et cetera. I just throw that out. Everybody has different ways of operating.
Since this is a moving target, if things do pick up more than we expect, we can go back and take a look at some of these.
Right.
Absolutely.
Mr. Hicks, what line is was zeroed out for that? Was that on the, is that 52, 57, 10?
No, we put it under the capital expense. I think it's 5730.
But it wouldn't even show in the detail if you cut it out.
Right, we cut it out. But
Yeah,
it would be on the capital if it was in there.
if it were there.
Right.
See, Mayor, that's that's the right way to do it. In the past, we used to have a lot of backup in there for things that actually weren't included in the worksheets. And we got to the point where we said, don't put anything in the backup that isn't in the worksheets. And that made a lot of sense, and it made the budget review go a lot smoother. However, in this particular case, when we're cutting back on capital, and I'm not just talking about IT, I think we need some insight into what it is we're cutting back.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting we put it in the budget, but I suggest that whoever's presenting the budget for their area be prepared to make that comment.
Okay, I'll make a note and I'll send that to you guys, the things that were cut.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't really have a sense of, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, for example, if you told me that we were cutting out capital on network security, for example, that makes us more vulnerable to cyber terrorism by a significant amount, I would say put it back in. Because the last thing we need right now in this situation is for IT communications to be shut down across the facility, like happened to Atlanta with ransomware a year ago or whatever it was. So,
well, I did have cybersecurity expense in the capital area, but we took that out.
well, does it make us significantly more vulnerable? And then I'll ask the question right now.
Well, we just finished our last analysis with Presidio, and I'd like to get this done at least every quarter, but we don't have the funding for it right now.
What would you like to get done?
I'd like to have another cybersecurity analysis done over the whole network every quarter.
Oh, well, that doesn't sound like capital to me. That sounds like expense, operational expense.
Yeah, that sounds like operation. That doesn't sound like capital to me either.
I agree.
Okay.
So is that consideration to put that back in the budget or hold off?
Well, how much is it
I put 52,000 in there
for
So-
the year?
for the year, yes.
You know me, I'm paranoid, so I'd be inclined to put it in, but the rest of the council may not agree with that.
Can I offer
I
a
think,
consideration? Go ahead, Mayor, I'm
I
sorry,
think-
please.
I think a breach in that regard, it would cost us far more than $52,000.
Amen.
I agree.
So, I mean, we have to have the proper security in place in order to preserve the system.
Sound like we're all on the same page. You guys are as paranoid as I am. That's good.
I wouldn't go that far. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
Well,
kidding.
maybe not as quite as far, but
Ladies and gentlemen, if I may, please. $52,000. In the grand scheme, not terribly considerable, but for this individual department, it is fairly considerable, given the current state of affairs. So are we therefore contemplating a reprioritization from some other line item, or are we expected to go out and identify $52,000 from somewhere?
what if we did a compromise, Terrence? What if we said, okay, Michael, I think said he wanted to do it quarterly. Well, maybe we don't do it 4 times a year. Maybe we do it 3 times a year or something like that. I could live with some variation like that.
What if we did twice and consider a budget adjustment to take care of the others as conditions improve?
That was going to be my suggestion. Why don't we
Yeah.
put in 26 and revisit?
Yep.
That would be my recommendation. So
Okay,
thank you.
good. We got a compromise. Good.
Good idea.
Mr. Hicks, you can live with that?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
So that $5,000 adjustment to $4,000 for dietary and food, or food and dietary, will go towards that.
Hey, all right.
There
So
we go.
whatever additional
We just have to
opportunities,
find 25 more.
that's exactly right. Whatever additional opportunities we can identify as we continue this process, ladies and gentlemen, that's what needs to be happened. We have this pretty tight. So thank you.
Okay.
It'll come out of the telephone.
Oh, I've been looking and picking on that for, you have no idea, Councilman Allen. Yes,
Oh, I
sir.
know. I'm
Well, as a side note, the finance office has all the data about the allocation for this telephone. So Althea and I will go over it tomorrow.
Of course. Any other thoughts or observations concerning information technology?
I guess not.
Councilman Taylor, you okay, sir? Councilman Taylor? Councilman Allen?
He is muted.
I'm good with it. Thank you very much.
Hello?
Councilman
he's
Taylor,
back.
you okay? Any questions, sir?
Yeah, on packet page 2 or 3,
Sir.
line item 52, 6240. Did you get that?
The auto allowance. So $3,600 because we have a staff person. The initial request, Councilman Taylor, believe it or not, was for an actual vehicle. And so we actually have staff that transport their own personal cars back and forth to take care of issues or concerns regarding information technology. And so that's why that was included. The initial
It's
thought,
a-
Hey, if I could jump in here, we have no vehicle for the CCTV guy to go around the city and repair these cameras. He's using his own van. And so what we've done is finance put some money into the budget to pay him for gas, but that does not cover the repairs and the wear and tear on his vehicles. Secondly, the IT guys, the vehicle that we currently have is 19 years old, and my guys are afraid to drive that vehicle from here to the Wyatt Recreation Center. So we put a vehicle in the budget so that all 4 of them can share it.
It sounds to me like it ought to be in there.
it does. Our recommendation is the $3,600 a year to achieve what Michael just talked about. Again, we're not in position to buy a new vehicle specifically for information technology for obvious reasons. And that was the basis of that compromise. So that's pretty straightforward in my mind.
So Thomas, translate that. Are we gonna get the vehicle?
No,
For the-
we're not. There's no
or not?
recommendation for a vehicle.
Okay, so the CCTV guy gonna continue to use his van, and the IT guys do not want to drive the 19-year-old vehicle that leaks and it keeps breaking down.
Mr. Hicks, we had that discussion during our budget review with the Office of the City Manager, Department of Finance and Accounting, and it was decided in lieu of a vehicle, we'll make this opportunity available for $300 a month until we can get to a place in which we can replace or update the vehicle. That's the recommendation, and that was the recommendation weeks ago.
Let me ask a dumb question.
Hold on, wait. I think we're talking about two different things here, because I'm hearing Mr. Hicks saying that $300 per month, 12 months, $3,600 goes to the CCTV guy who's going around in his own van. But he's
Right.
also talking about his individual IT staff that needs to do things around the city, and the vehicle with the IT department has is it I don't want to put words in your mouth here, Mr. Hicks. Is it unsafe? Is it unreliable? What is it?
Both, Madam Mayor. It's unsafe, it's unreliable, and it's 19 years old.
Okay.
And the guys
So
don't
those are two
want to
separate
drive it.
issues, and it looks like one of them is handled in the budget. It looks like one of them is not.
That's
Is that
correct.
fair?
Yep. Mayor, that's why the suggestion I have, I think we are replacing elsewhere in the budget some vehicles. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that one of the vehicles that we're replacing in there, while it is not bright, shiny, brand new, and maybe the seats are kind of worn or what have you, but it is still reliable, that vehicle, instead of being sold, could be transferred to the IT department?
Councilman Clay, that is precisely the plan to address the secondary issue.
I have asked that question before. We would love to get a used vehicle. We would love
Okay.
to.
All right, good. Then it sounds like we got it taken care of.
We do.
We're gonna give him a vehicle from another department.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay,
I think one of the
that's good. I'm
challenges
good with that.
I think one of the challenges that we've faced, and we probably need to work proactively to get our heads around this, is better tracking of our vehicles and what's the work that's been done on them, and making sure that we understand the state of each vehicle. It's my understanding that when we are getting maintenance on these vehicles, it's very general, and you can't track what's happening to each individual vehicle when it's going over to Moody's. So that inhibits our ability to really understand how much life we're getting out of vehicles, and at what point we need to be replacing them. So I don't have all the answers about this, but I certainly think that we need to start exploring a better system for that.
Well, Mayor, we have a requirement that Moody's enters all that data into the Square Rigger system. And we have elevated Willis Moody to the responsibility, different Moody, mind you, our procurement person. He is also fleet manager. So I would think that Willis, working with the data from Square Rigger, could track that and do exactly what you're suggesting, know the status of the vehicle and pick the best one.
Well,
Ms. Ford, Bradley, yep. Yeah, I saw you on mute. I didn't even have to ask. Go ahead.
Well, right now, as far as the vehicles, you cannot track, because even when we get the invoices, it doesn't tell you exactly what vehicle was worked on. And so that'll be difficult for him to track the expenses of each vehicle. That's been my argument. We don't know how much we've spent over time on a single vehicle because it doesn't track the vehicle. It's not tracked by the vehicle number. When we get the invoices over, it said worked on a police vehicle.
Well, wait, whoa. The invoice, they were supposed to put the data. I've been on this for a couple or 3 years now. they were supposed to put that data into Square Rigger. And I swear to God, I saw a report out of Square Rigger that showed different work that had been done on specific vehicles. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I've got to believe that they are entering that data. You're not going to work on a vehicle and be able to submit an invoice unless you can itemize for that invoice. We worked on this police car and this guy from IT and so forth. And that may be lumped together in a line item on an invoice, but it should be basic data in Square Rigger. We have access to Square Rigger, and that is something that, Michael, I don't know who can help with that, but I don't know whether you're familiar with Square Rigger, but that's an IT job that we should be able to look into.
Yes, and so I hope to address that, and I'll see something, say something software. The software package that I'm putting on for the April 20th meeting, it covers all of that now. So we should be able to get rid of Square Rigger. I've already asked the company, QCIN, can this software be expanded to include other departments? And they said yes.
Okay, well, I would have hoped that we could just get the data out of Square Rigger, but.
Yeah, are we getting data out of Square Rigger at this point?
I could take a look.
To my knowledge, no. As far as Willis, I don't believe so.
Okay, Althea, I'm going to make a note here, and I'll work with him to get that data pool.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to get that, you know, as the mayor said, we need to have that information, and we need to have it. We don't need to lag about 3 or 4 months behind. We need to have that information so we can determine, you know, the usage of each cars and what's been done to them.
How can you do fleet management if you don't have access to that kind of data?
Absolutely.
That was one of the reasons we set up the VPN for Moody, so that they can have access to Square Rigger to put in the information each time they do work on the fleet.
Well, if they're not putting that data in, and that was an issue at one point in time, they were running way behind putting the data in, which makes it pretty useless. But if they're not putting the data in, then we ought to have a meeting.
Well, I think there's an opportunity to figure out if the disconnect is on their end or our end. So, or both. So how much time do we need to figure out being served, and when do we get a report back?
I can work with Willis, Althea.
That's what I was gonna say, work with Willis.
Yeah, we can have a report. But actually, is Willis back? Is he back in the office?
He's working remotely. I've been in contact with him every day. I just sent him a text to inquire about Square Rigger. But
Okay.
I'm not gonna comment, but we've had discussion about not being able to track which vehicles are being worked on based on the invoice that we received. So based on the discussions we've had, to my knowledge, he isn't accessing that system.
Okay, well, Thea, it shouldn't depend on invoices. The data that's entered should drive the invoices, but it also should be the input data to the invoices should be accessible by Willis. And that's what you need to track the vehicle. I can appreciate that if all you guys are getting is invoices, you're not going to know anything.
Exactly.
But the data that's used to generate the invoices should be accessible by us over the VPN.
Yes.
And that's what you need to do, because you need to know how often if this car is having its oil changed every month or adding a quart of oil. Well, maybe that tells you something about the engine.
I mean, I think we all agree. I think we're all in agreement about this. We need to figure out if Moody's is entering the information. We need to find out if we're accessing the information. So how long is it going to take to make that happen?
Well, I'm talking to Willis now. I just text him, but I can have him check into that tomorrow and have an answer whether or not we are accessing it and how can we start accessing.
Okay.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or observations for information technology? Councilman Taylor?
No, I don't have anything else.
Councilman Gay?
Can you hear me?
No.
Councilman Allen,
No, sir, I'm good.
Councilman Clay,
I'm good.
Mayor Motley Brown.
All is well.
Okay, very well. Likewise, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's round of budget deliberations. The next dialogue will take place on April 15th, 2020, precisely 1 week from today. However, for Monday, April 13th, Mayor and City Council and myself will have a 6 o'clock visit with our strategic plan facilitator, Adam Seslow, as he has been working virtually with Department Director Clusters to get us to where we'll be in that regard. So we'll have a chance to dialogue and visit with him for about a 2-hour period of time, if not less than that, to assist the overall process as we engage strategically. I bring this up because part of the original intent was to have a strategic workshop, if you will, or strategic visioning session, Mayor, City Council, City Manager, Department Directors to be on the same page. And of course, given the current state of affairs, we are operating in this fashion. So that will be the next order of business this coming Monday at 6 o'clock, and that will be a virtual format. You will likewise receive an electronic mail invitation to that effect over the next day or so. And likewise, I look forward to visiting with everybody at that time, pardon me.
Okay.
Sounds
So,
good.
very well. Unless there's anything further, Mayor Motley Broom, I'll give you the opportunity to adjourn.
She's gone.
Okay. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Stay well, have a great evening, and take care.
You
Good
too.
night, all.
All right.
Good night.